So before I get into today's topic today, I just want to talk about my new setup. So obviously now I have a green screen and studio lighting, which is a little bit different than what I had for my introduction video, which was actually just filmed at my desk with like kind of like well not kind of it was very low quality lighting to most degree. So now going forward I'll be able to have this good lighting. But anyway, so today's topic is obviously as you can see when will NACS finally win a major? And I'm filming this video actually about 30 minutes after the Cologne 2017 final has just ended between SK and Cloud9. And Cloud9 ended up losing 3-0 to SK. But despite that, I think they played a pretty good match, and I'll actually talk more about that in another video coming up. I plan on making a Cologne 2017 review slash kind of like a PGL major preview video. Uh, but anyway, so Cloud9, they played a very good match in my opinion. I think they showed a lot about how good they can be as a team, and I think they kind of showed like their performance. Uh, I think they kind of showed with their performance that they can be a top 5 team in the world, maybe at their current state. Obviously, like I'm not going to put them above G2 or SK or FaZe or Astralis. I think those are certainly the top 4 teams in the world right now, without a question. Um, but to play to play one of the top 4 teams in the world, and SK, probably the best team in the world right now, in my opinion, and the team that I'm actually predicting to win the major going into it. I think that they played a very good match against SK. Not necessarily across all 3 maps, but I think just in general it was a very good match. But they just kind of choked it away at the end, especially with that Inferno game. I mean, they were up 14-11, I believe, and then they ended up losing 16-14. So, uh, but regardless of that, back in 2015 in the summer, Cloud9 were one of the best teams in the world during the Fnatic era of dominance, I would say. With Team Envious was very good then. Navi was really good around then as well. And then obviously Astralis, who at the time was TSM, were a very good team. Cloud9 was actually a really good team as well, and they actually showed some very dominant performances in some events. But I think, obviously this Cloud9 is much different than the one we saw in 2015. Now they have Stewie 2K and Automatic, who are two uh, up and coming, like, I guess playmakers you would call them. I mean, Automatic just has really good aim, which is obviously really nice. And then Stewie 2K is, kind of becoming the in-game leader of the team and kind of calling in a very similar style to Shocks when he called for G2 when they still had Scream, like the old lineup, not the new one. Because when you look at G2's old lineup and kind of compare it to Cloud9, you've got kind of 3 players who like can put up performances and can be good support players and things like that, but nothing that really like stands out. And I think Cloud9 is very similar to that, and the fact that Stewie 2K is kind of calling all these plays for himself, excuse me, very similar to how Shocks did. Uh, but Scream is also, there in the sense of Automatic. Of course, I don't think Automatic and Scream, or excuse me, Automatic and Stewie 2K are quite at Scream and Shock's level. I think they're very good players. I don't think that I don't think we could call them like some of the best riflers in the world right now. Um, but I think that they're very good players, and I think that they could potentially hit that level. I think Stewie 2K has a higher ceiling than Automatic. Like I think Stewie 2K could be a really good player, or like even a top 3, top 5 NA player in the world, and be on a top NA team as an A-game leader, or even just as like a support player or a rifler of some kind. Automatic, I think it's a little harder of a case to make, but I think he is a very good player, and I think he also could be like the 4th or 5th best rifler on a team, maybe as like a support player or something to that degree. But either way, so I think Cloud9, they have the chance to be a very good team. And I actually, a couple weeks ago, Thorin kind of made a video, and he kind of made a video preferencing how Cloud9 have kind of hit their ceiling in his opinion, and that um, that they might need to make a team change or something like that to try and fix it. And that's of course paraphrasing; those aren't direct quotes from him. But I agree with Thorin that I think a team change might need to happen for them to become one of the best teams in the world, or to fix NACS, as it were. Uh, but I actually disagree with the fact that they've hit their ceiling. I think they've seen their ceiling as a team. I think that there has been a point where they've played like as good as they can. But I actually don't think that we've seen them hit their ceiling like at a consistent level. And that actually is one of their main problems, I think, is that they just have such poor consistency. I mean, they're just like a very inconsistent team at all times, and I think that really hurts them, especially when you're trying to go deep in a tournament. Like if you think about the PGL Major, I mean, they're the only NA team in the PGL Major, so obviously, they're the only with a shot. And for me to say I think they have a chance of winning is pretty far fetched in my opinion. I think if they beat SK today, if they had won ESL One Cologne and they could beat SK in a best of five, maybe you can kind of make a case like, look what they did here. I mean, this is only the major's only a week away, so it's literally 1 week later. If they play as dominant as they did, they can make it. But I think Cloud9 at this point, after losing that 3-0, again, I think the matches were really close, but I think SK is always going to win that series despite how close those matches were. There's always something about SK where they always have composure, and they always seemed like when you're watching SK play and you've got like Coldzera and Fallen in like a 1v2 or 1v3, like you always think, all right, well, they're going to win it. Like they've got a very good chance. And you always see like SK, like it was 14-11, and of course, being a North American myself, I was kind of always kind of secretly rooting for Cloud9, like hoping that Cloud9 would finally kind of show up and win a major tournament. But always in the back of my mind, even when it was 14-11, I'm like, man, they can win this still. Like there's no doubt in my mind that SK at any point could go from nothing to just like winning 10 rounds in a row, or 6 rounds in a row plus, to close out a game against Cloud9. Um, so I think Cloud9, what they need to do to get better is they just need a little bit more consistency, and I think they just need to get a little bit better, uh, not necessarily strat calls, but I think they kind of, especially in that Inferno match we just saw, they kind of ran too many defaults, and they kept trying to like kind of play B, or trying to get banana control, especially on Inferno, and they got control of banana and they were just outside the site, but they couldn't make any executes onto the actual site itself, and they didn't really play A at all, really. Like, I mean, they had like a couple of A executes, but they never really tried to just get general map control on that map, and I think that's something we kind of saw from them on all three maps, which is in my opinion, why they lost and why they're probably not set to win this major. I think a top four finish for Cloud9 is very much possible. But it'll all depend on how everything shakes out, because you never know what's going to happen in the Swiss system, and there's plenty of teams that could just beat a good team once. Like Vega Squadron, Flip Side. Those are two teams in my mind that like they could take a game off, like Virtus Pro, or they could take a game off Navi, or they could take a game off maybe even G2, because we really don't. G2 is another team that has a lot of problems with inconsistencies right now, and kind of the style that they play is not a consistent like winning style. Um, so those are teams that I think could like take a game off of a team like G2. Astralis and SK, I don't think will have any games taken off them by lower teams, because I think their strategy is so structured and so set that they're just a really good teams, and that they'll beat anybody. But again, G2 and like North, teams like that who are kind of like really good but kind of lower. Those are teams that like could definitely lose and kind of shake up the bracket for PGL. But the second team I want to talk about is Team Liquid, and Team Liquid is a team who I think have kind of dropped the ball not making the major. I think that they had a very good chance to, and they kind of choked it away. But I also think Team Liquid is a team who has a very high ceiling, and has a higher ceiling than Cloud9 going forward. And I think another thing that hurts them is that we didn't really see anything from Elige in these past two events between Cologne and the major qualifier. which is kind of disheartening to a degree. But I think Elige is still one of the better NA players in the world, and he could be very good going forward. um, but another thing I think we saw from Team Liquid is that they have structure. You know, Stanislaw, who played for Optic, has come in and he's already starting to build the structure. I just don't think it's ready yet. I think it should have been ready enough to get to the major, and I think, you know, again, that they choked for all intents and purposes getting to the major. But I think that they certainly had the opportunity and the chance to make it. They just ended up not making it. Of course, kind of ended up playing flip side in the the last qualifier, which kind of sucks for them. But again, you know, Team Liquid had the chances to make it, and they lost to teams that they, for most intents and purposes, probably should have beaten or should be able to beat, I should say. But I think they have the talent. They have the structure with Stanislaw. He's a very good in-game leader. They could easily become a top team in the world. I think Twists, who we saw at the PGL Major, played very well. He had a very good event, and I'm not sure if he can do that again. But if he can continue to play that good, um, that's going to take a lot of pressure off Elige and make it a little bit easier for Elige to kind of step back in. And of course, like I said, Elige struggled. So if he can actually get back to his, Cologne 2016, like mid 2016 to fall of 2016 performances, Cloud9 or God, Team Liquid can become a very dangerous team moving forward. I think they have the tools. I think JDM can be a very good opper. Obviously, he can be in my opinion, maybe a top 5 opper in the world at his peak, which can certainly win you a tournament or win you a major potentially. But again, Liquid, they have a higher ceiling than Cloud9, and I definitely think they could make it. But I'm just not so sure of when. The question is, when can they make the major, or when will they win a major even? Um, and I think it's hard to say that they could do it at the next major. Obviously that's a long time from now. We don't really have like a lot of information about the major, and we don't really know anything about it because obviously the one next week hasn't even been played yet. But I think that they could become a very good team if they consistently get better from now until that next major. And then the last team I wanted to talk about was Optic, who were essentially ruined by Stanislaw leaving Team Liquid. And they are a team who doesn't seem to have the skill to be able to make it deep in a major or make it deep in tournaments. I think obviously they looked horrible at the major qualifier, and I just don't think that was what they expected to happen. And then in Cologne, they actually just switched it up and they just made Tarek the in-game leader for the event, and they actually played significantly better. So I'm wondering kind of what Optic is going to do at this point. I think they might just keep Tarek as the in-game leader because of how that went. But again, they had Hazed as their coach, and then they brought him in as a player. And to bring him in as a player like 2 or 3 weeks before and expect him to have all these strategies and things like that, I think it's hard. Even though he was a coach, I think it's still hard to. There's some changes that need to be made when you're implementing yourself into a strategy. So I think there's both ways they could go about it, and they could get like a lot better, and you know potentially. I mean, first they need to make the major, but potentially like go deep in a major. But I don't think Optic is a team that's going to be winning a major anytime soon. I think that they have the least amount of chances out of the 3 teams that I've named in this video. So Cloud9 and Liquid, I think, are the 2 teams you really have to look at as teams that could potentially win a major. I think Cloud9 doesn't have it for this major next week. I think, again, if they had shown up against SK in the finals, I think I could have been like, yeah, I mean, they're a dark horse team. Like, if things go their way and they only have to play G2 or SK or Astralis, if they only have to play that team in the finals, or, something happens where they would only have to play one of those top 4 teams, I think they have a chance to beat them in a series. I actually do think they could make the finals if they play as good as they did today against G2 or FaZe. Obviously at the major qualifier they lost to G2 16-11, I believe it was, on cash. Yeah, 16-11, and it was on 16-11 on cash. But I think that they're a very good team. Uh, I think that they again, they could make a finals if they have to play G2 in a best of 3. I think they could maybe beat FaZe in a best of 3, but if I'm a betting man, I'm certainly not putting my money on Cloud9. I think that Cloud9 right now is at a point where they could become a very good team if they kind of hit their ceiling and hit it consistently. Because again, like I talked about before, they had their ceiling. Um, like they've hit it a couple times, but they've never consistently hit it to become a top 5 team in the world or a top 10 team. Um, but right now, I think that they're good enough to, like I said, make top 4. I think it would be the goal for them at this major. Top 2, like making it to the finals, would be outstanding for them. But again, I think that would only happen if they play very much into the favor, or if the bracket plays into their favor. And then, again, just to summarize, Team Liquid, I think that they have a very high ceiling. I think that they can become a very good team, but I think they need more time. I think they need more structure. Well, not necessarily more structure, but they just need like better calling and better in-game leading. I think Stanislaw has the opportunity to make this team a top team, but I just don't think they're there yet.